Hello, friends. Welcome to the Note Coach podcast. I'm your host, Suzanne Kohlberg. Today's topic is in response to a question I received. It was quite a long email, so I'm going to paraphrase it. The question is, how do I express my needs when I fear upsetting someone? First thing I want to say is this is so relatable. How many of us end up in situations that we don't want to be in because we don't want to upset someone? However, in this situation, someone is upset, and that someone is us. And it makes me think of that quote from Brené Brown: choose discomfort over resentment. Because in the moment where you express your needs, ask for your needs to be met, say no, make a request that may rock the boat, rattle the other person, inconvenience them, upset them, it's uncomfortable. That can be as uncomfortable as fuck, especially if you have never done it before and aren't familiar with it. But over time, like any muscle, it gets stronger. So I'm thinking of an example. I used to be a people pleaser, a doormat, an exploding doormat, because I would say yes until I couldn't say yes anymore, and then I would lose it. So a lot of my friendships ended in fire. Like, it wasn't a we've moved on. It was a get to the point where, there's some sort of explosion and I held resentment and they held resentment, and, it wasn't pretty. But when you express your needs, then you're not responsible for how people respond to that. It's easier with people who don't yet know you when you start to speak up for yourself, because they don't have any other version of you. If for your whole life, your whole relationship, your whole time with your best friend or your sister, you've been the yes person, and suddenly you do a 180, they can get upset, and dare I even say, rightly so. Not that your needs aren't important and valid, but if we're in that exploding doormat territory, I'm trying to think of an example. Say I'm trying to think of an example that's not pressurized. Like, say every week you meet your best friend at for spicy food. You order a hot spicy meal to share. Go halvesies in, whatever, share plate. And you don't actually enjoy spicy food. But every week you go along and you smile as you suffer through the jalapenos, or, whatever it is that you don't enjoy. I like a little bit of spice, but not like the full kick. I'd be like crying. And then one day you decide, I want us to go for sandwiches. I don't know, I'm just trying to think of something that's, more plain. And they're like, oh, but every week we get jalapenos. And, this, as I said, this is a dumb of dumb example. But if you've been doing this for months, years, decades even, and you are just really obstinate about it, because sometimes we get to the point where it's no longer a negotiation, we're putting our foot down, and we say, well, we've been having jalapenos for years, why don't I get to choose for once? Does this sound familiar? Can you imagine being on the receiving end of that? You love jalapenos. You love your friend. You love meeting them every week for jalapenos. And suddenly they're annoyed about it. It can be really, really confusing. So all that to say, when you start expressing your needs with friends, how you start the process. Hey, Sarah, I love catching up with you every week. It's so much fun. I no longer enjoy, you don't need to say you never enjoyed jalapenos. You can say, as I get older, I have a less of a tolerance for spicy food. How would you feel about us going halves in a plain sandwich or a sub or whatever you want to call it instead? And chances are they're like, yeah, okay. And then when the day rolls around, it's not that they don't care about you. It's not that they don't value you. It's that for however many months, years, decades, you've been having Jalapeno Wednesday, and now it's Jalapeno Wednesday, and you have to they say, oh, let's go and get it, in your head, you might be like, oh, they didn't listen. Just a reminder, I'm not tolerating spicy food the way that I did. So this week we were going to try sandwiches. Or how about you, or how about we eat our own food? Like you order the jalapenos and I have this and we don't share. Or like there's so many ways, but for us who overgive, people please, don't state our needs and have done so for such a long period of time, often when we do start to express our needs, we don't express them cleanly. We've got years of pent-up frustration that can kind of come out almost like we're attacking them. Any Harry Potter fans in the house? Do you remember? I don't remember the book. Well, I've read the books, but the scene from the movie comes to mind because I've read the books once, but I've watched the movies a number of times. I think it's book movie 4, where it's the Goblet of Fire, and they have the Beauxbatons, which is the school of girls who are visiting Hogwarts, and Ron wants to ask one of them out to the dance. It's got a name. Someone let me know in the comments. The Yule Ball. And then Ron's kind of stuttering and not nonsensical, and Ginny, I think, is there going, because Harry's like, what happened? And Ginny's like, well, it was kind of scary, actually. He kind of yelled at her. And this scene is like Ron's desire, the need he desires, is to go to the dance with this girl. And he's building it up in his head and he's putting a lot of pressure on himself and he's not good at articulating it. So when he comes face to face, he just kind of yells at her. And it's like, oh my goodness, can you see where you may have inadvertently been that to your friend, loved one, family member, because for a period of time you've done things one way, you desire a change, and you've just kind of pent it up or built it up and blurted it out, and they have received that as you kind of yelling at them. And this is not to say to keep eating the jalapenos or to keep putting your needs to the side. Never, ever. I'm the nope coach after all, teaching boundaries, putting yourself first. Self first isn't selfish. But how you express that and how you articulate that and how you get the reps in to get stronger at that builds over time. I'll never forget, and I know I've told this story before, but it's just so pertinent for this. My late mum, I thought she enjoyed this white linen perfume. I remember I was 16 or 18. I was youngish at the time. I bought it for her for Mother's Day. She sprayed it on liberally, and I thought, my mum loves this. So every birthday, Christmas, Mother's Day, you name it, I proudly bought her this white linen, thinking that she loved it. Fast forward a number of years, and I have my own daughter, Xanthi, and she goes to her very first Mother's Day stall. So here in Australia, the school puts on a stall, the children go with their little money and they buy something and they bring it home and present it to their mum. And she bought me this perfume, and it smelled hideous. And I'm very sensitive to all kinds of scents. I get headaches very, very easily. And I remember opening this gift that my 4-year-old proudly presented to me, and I said to her, I love this, Xanthi. Thank you so much for having put so much thought into buying me a gift. You know, I truly appreciate you. However, mummy, you know, as in me, has a lot of sensitivity, like smells give mummy a headache. So in future, can you please not buy mummy any perfumes ever? And I gave her a list of things that I like. I like notebooks, I like pens, I like, you know, all these things, but not perfume, please. And she was like, okay, mummy, yep. And then, you know, gave her a hug, told her how much I loved it, loved her. My mother was sitting there, and when Xanthi left the room, she was like, how dare you? Like, that's a horrible thing to do. And I was like, what? And she's like, you've just crushed your daughter's hopes and dreams. And I'm still confused. And I'm like, what? And she's like, do you know how many years I've been wearing white linen? And I was like, whoa. Hold up. You don't like white linen? And then you could just see her be like, and it was like, this is just the thing. Had she said to me 20 odd years ago exactly what I just said to Xanthi, then she would have saved herself 20 years of white linen. Another example for my mum, at one stage, I don't remember how it started, but she bought a goose for her kitchen. And for those of you listening, you can let me know in the comments. Do you remember in the late 80s, early 90s, the geese theme? There was geese tea towels, salt and pepper shakers, clock. Our kitchen was goose central. Everybody bought my mum goose things. And then one Christmas, in a vent of pure frustration, I can still remember her, I can't stand geese. And we were all like, what? She was like, there was one time I bought one thing. And I think there's so many times that we do this. We see somebody have something, and then we assume that they love it. So we buy everything for them. And then they don't actually like it, but they've never communicated it to us. So, when you say to somebody, thank you for your thought, your consideration, or whatever. My taste buds have changed. My interest has changed. My desire to do this has changed. I still want to spend time with you. I still appreciate gifts. I love that your thoughtfulness, whatever it is. But, when you're expressing your needs and you're fearing that you're going to upset the person, there's two parts to this. Would you upset them even more if you acquiesce to them for months, years, decades, as in the case of my mum? Then they found out that you don't like white linen or geese or jalapenos or horror movies or whatever it is, and you'd only been doing that to appease them. But the other thing too, there may be some people who are genuinely upset. Like, I love Jalapeno Wednesday, or whatever the thing is. But by you communicating that it is no longer in your pleasure, it's no longer lights you up, their initial disgruntledness or upsetness can be replaced when they find somebody else who loves it just as much as them. Personal example, I don't particularly like anime. My husband is the biggest Japanese anime fan there ever was. And when we were first dating, a couple of times, I attempted to watch some anime with him and promptly fell asleep. And I was very honest from very early in our relationship that this is just not for me. Fast forward, we've been together over 20 years now, and we have 2 children. Our son loves anime just as much as my husband does. And to watch them together, like, I like watching them watch anime, as weird as it sounds, because the joy in which they partake in the show and they discuss it afterwards and they pull it apart and they look for plot holes and whatever, it is a joy to behold. Me pretending for either one of them that I love this too is not in service to anyone. So when we, may upset someone, like, oh, I really did like doing this with you, it frees them up to later find someone who loves it just as much as them and foster a connection they may not have otherwise fostered. But it also frees you up to find something with that person that is a win-win for both of you. Because although my husband doesn't like, I don't like Japanese animation, and my husband doesn't particularly enjoy musicals, my daughter and I love musicals. So my husband and son, they will watch their Japanese animation, and in another room, my daughter and I will be doing like a Hamilton sing-along, and everybody in the house is happy. And then we can, not always, all the time, 24/7, like not the Brady Bunch, but then we can come together as a family and everybody can feel that their cup is fulfilled. All of this to say, expressing your needs, setting boundaries, speaking up, in the beginning, it's going to be more challenging because you've never done it before. If we were like, you told me, Suzanne, I want to be an Olympian. I want to be an Olympic freestyler. It's like, do you know how to swim? Yes. When was the last time you swam? 10 years ago. You understand there's going to be some training required. You've got the basic skill set, like you know how to not drown, but you are not yet Olympic material. And sometimes when we want to express our needs and speak up and we see people who do it so easily and effortlessly, and we want to be that, but we don't realize the reps that have gone in to become that. My husband and I have a very, very direct relationship that some people look at in bizarre wonder. Like, he'll be like, do you want to do this? And I'll be like, I'd rather watch paint dry. And he's not insulted. He's like, oh, okay. And then he'll think of something else. So we find that middle ground, because if the person you are with is that honest with you, I'd rather watch paint dry. I'd rather watch grass grow. Like, depending on the person, had it been somebody I don't know so well, I may have teetered my answer. I'd be like, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm not actually available for this right now. How about this instead? But because my husband and I know each other so well, that's something you can be full selves with and kind of have a laugh about. But it becomes a period over time. And then people who know you, if you're that direct from the get-go, they don't know any other version of you. They don't take offense because they're like, oh, that's just how you are. That's just Suze. Like, being able to say no to others means that you can say yes to yourself. But also then you don't end up inadvertently keeping tally in your head, because this happens. How often has someone asked something of you that you've been screaming no in your head, but you say yes, and you kind of keep a checkbox. So I did this for them, I did that for them, I did this for them, and then you need something. So you're like, can you do me with this? And they say no, and then you're affronted after all I've done for you. As soon as that phrase comes out of my mind, I'm like, oh, there's something I need to clean up here. Because the thing is, it's never an after all I've done for you, because I had agency every single time to say no. Unless it's explicitly stated, like if you're doing some sort of like contra. So say, for example, a podcast swap. You want to be a guest on my podcast and I'll be a guest on your podcast, but it's clearly stated from the beginning that this is what this is. It's a podcast swap. As opposed to, in the past, I've had people share my posts, which I love. Thank you so much for people who share my stuff. They share my posts without me asking. They share my posts without me asking. They share my posts. And then they have something coming up and they send me a message and they're like, can you share this? And it's not aligned with my brand, or it's not something I believe in or agree with. And then when I say no, they get upset. I shared all your stuff after all I've done for you. Did we have an agreement? Like, if we had an agreement and I reneged, 100%, let's talk. But when you do something and checking the boxes in your head in hopes that the other person will return the favor, but they don't even know that they need to return the favor because they don't realize it was a favor in the first place. So it's something to consider when you are doing things, saying yes, saying no, sharing or whatever. Do you have an underhanded, unsaid, unstated need that you're not communicating? Because if people said to me, I'll share your post if you share mine, it wouldn't be an immediate no. It'd be like, well, what post is it? Let me have a look first. Because if you're asking me to share something that, as I said, doesn't align with my values or my brand, or I don't agree with, I don't want to get behind it. So sometimes, or if you invite me to be on your podcast, like, thank you so much. Yes, let's go. And then you say, so when am I going to be on yours? You didn't state at the beginning that this was a podcast swap. So when we're not expressing our needs, it can go to when we are doing things that we don't want to do and we're unable to say no. Or it could be when we are asking for things, but the words out of our mouth, would you like to come on my podcast, is not finished by, and then I'll go on yours. Like, that part is just assumed. And sometimes I'm guilty of this too, like where I have had to pause and thought we had an agreement and then really sat with what it was that I said and how much of that was in my mind, and it wasn't clear. And after all of this, like, the final point I want to make is, if expressing your needs, if you don't express your needs, because back to this email that I got, because you're really worried about upsetting someone, this is going to be a tough pill to swallow, and this might be hard for some people to hear, but is that someone, a person you want to have either in your life at all, or particularly in your inner circle? If the people in your inner circle day to day are people that you have to do things with that you don't enjoy, can't ask for, like, could you please turn the television down? I'm recording a podcast. Or how about we go and do this? No, I want to do that. And we always do what they want to do. Is this a relationship, friendship place that we want to continue to foster? Sometimes things fade. I've done an episode called Reason, Season, Lifetime. And the reason I love that concept, no pun intended, reason, season, lifetime, is that there are sometimes people come into our life for a reason. We're pregnant at the same time. We're in a mum's group. Our kids started kindergarten together. That's the reason. And then when the kids grow older or the kindergarten year ends, that reason, the reason that we're connected, ends. The relationship falls away. Nobody's done another wrong. There's no rocking of the boat. It's just that reason has come to completion. Similarly, sometimes there is a season. Our kids do sports together, so we're doing carpool, or it's a period of our life where I'm obsessed with quilting or obsessed with Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. Like, and then you're like, actually, I'm not really that into Dungeons and Dragons anymore. That season is complete. And sometimes there is a lifetime. And just because the person is in our lives for a lifetime, because they are our sibling or our parent or our child or whatever, doesn't mean that it's not work. Doesn't mean that there aren't times where we have ruptures. We say something, they say something. Boundaries are inadvertently or sometimes even inadvertently trodden on. But life isn't about not having ruptures. Life is about how we repair. To use another Harry Potter example, in Harry Potter, there is a charm, like they learn charms, they learn spells. And there's I don't even know if you call it evil. There's a thing called a boggart, which, shows up differently to everyone. It shows up as your fear. So to me, a boggart would either show up as a very confined space, like an aeroplane, or a spider. They're things that I'm afraid of. And to my son Casimir, it might show up as a snake. To my daughter, it might show up as something else. Life isn't about avoiding our boggarts, hiding out, never ever going anywhere in fear that we might see something that scares us. Life is about strengthening our Patronus. And what the Patronus is the charm. Actually, I'm talking about Dementors here because the charm for boggarts is ridiculous. But being able to navigate that, being able to say the thing, express our needs, speak up for ourselves. So if you do speak up and express your needs and there is a rupture, doesn't necessarily mean the friendship, relationship, whatever is over. It just is a time for a repair, because a boundary is never really fully instated unless it's been tested, checked, rubbed up against, ding, ding, ding. Were you sure when you said that? It reminds me of that quote. I can't remember it exactly, but a sailor is never made in a harbor. Like a sailor is made when the ship goes out to the ocean, when it's rough, when there's storms, when things happen. If you're just hanging out in the harbor, so if you never ever have to express your needs and have somebody say no to you or somebody forget what you mentioned or somebody override you, then is that truly ever really a boundary? Because you've never been tested. So there are going to be times when boggarts appear and your greatest fear, the person is upset. But there's a great difference between somebody being upset, somebody being hurt, and somebody being harmed. The words 100% can hurt their feelings. My son told me a joke last night at dinner. This reminds me of it. He's like, that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And then somebody threw a dictionary at them. He's got a dry sense of humor. I wonder where he gets that from. But all that to say, you may upset someone inadvertently. It's never your intention. But are they hurt? Potentially, yes. But are they harmed? And then what they go through and their work and their processing isn't on us. We're not responsible for other people's feelings, but we are responsible for our own. So if we never speak up, never ask, always do things out of a sense of obligation, then inside, how are we feeling? What's our life like in the long run? Are we in a place that we love our life, or are we in a place that we're merely enduring it because we don't want to rock the boat? And externally, we might not rock any boats, but internally, there's like an inferno happening. Anyway, that was a lot. Things to think about. But all this to say, as you begin to express your needs, it may be a little bit rocky in start, especially for people you've never expressed your needs with before. A bit of repetition, a bit of grace, some gentle reminders, and then be amazed. Be willing to be amazed about how many people are on your side. They're like, oh my goodness, so good to see you asking. I'd totally love to do something else. They're really open to it. So many people are open to new things, whereas in our head, we're fearing. Like, what happens if you've been meeting your friend at a restaurant for Jalapeno Wednesday for however many years, and they're kind of over it too? And then you're like, let's do this instead. And they're actually excited. They're like, yeah, let's go and check out indoor ice skating, or let's go and do laser tag, or let's try something new. Like, what if they wanting to change as well? Have you even considered that this might not be you upsetting them? It might be an opening for a whole new chapter of your friendship relationship. Something to consider. Thank you for listening. If you haven't yet jumped on my newsletter, please do head to my website, suzannekohlberg.com/newsletter, or look in the show notes. I absolutely love my newsletter list. It's my happy place. I email weekly-ish, and yeah, I'd love to drop into your inbox once a week or so. Thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one. Bye for now.